Hello, everybody. Oh, I look like I'm washed out here. Let's see. Let me see if I can do something about that. Ah, there. Can you see me? Okay, anyway. You probably just need to hear me anyway. All right. Welcome to this week message. Um, okay, I find that really disturbing that I look all washed out, but I'm just going to ignore that. Have you ever had to have a difficult talk with somebody that you are supposed to love? Have you ever had to say no to somebody when you really wish you didn't have to, when you really would like to just not have that conversation at all? Or have you ever been a witness to something that you were really not impressed with? Well, I'm going to tell you a true story today. I am going to fool around with the light here and see if I can help. There. Hey, that seemed to help. Good. Okay. I'm going to tell you a story about Ivy and church. When I was still teaching Sunday school, and Ivy was just a wee little girl, she was 5 years old, and I had just gotten done teaching Sunday school, and church had let out, and we were having a big lunch afterwards, and which we did every week at the time, and uh, so everybody is in line, waiting, and of course some of the kids ran up, and I got my kids, and we were sort of in the middle of the pack, waiting, in the line and chatting with everybody, and the girls were behind me in line, which was in retrospect a mistake. Anyway, Ivy was all of 5 years old and with her big glasses, and she did not see particularly well and was not particularly tall at that point. But she was taking quite a bit of time deciding on what she wanted to eat. And eventually, she got to the tea, and because she was little, she wanted a little cup of tea, but she wanted to put her milk and sugar in it, and she was stirring it. And the lady behind her in line, who was actually a very nice person, but the lady behind her in line had had it with her hemming and hawing and not moving along. And she gave her a push and yelled at her. And I was already halfway across the room because Hannah and Kira had gone tearing off to sit with their buddies. And so I wanted to make sure that, there wasn't a trail of food. Ay, ay, ay. And poor Ivy, she actually fell and her food went flying and her tea hit the deck. And, the entire room turned and looked. And Ivy experienced that as a really embarrassing thing. But so did the woman who said what she said and gave her a push, which she really shouldn't have done. Um, and I'm not just being I mean, I think it would have saved them both a little bit of embarrassment. A lot of embarrassment, both of them, if she had just been able to take a breath or even just to have a kind word to say. In any case, people were quite upset with her. Ivy was hugely embarrassed and burst into tears and trotted back down to the basement where we held the Sunday school. And so, of course, all the kids all went running after her with, glaring at this poor lady. I ended up cleaning it up, and I was hot under the collar. I'd be the first person to admit I was really angry that somebody had given my kid a shove and had caused her to fall. Now, Ivy, I don't, yeah, you guys have met her. She has to this day very thick glasses. Back then, she was considered legally blind without her glasses, and even with her glasses, her eyesight wasn't very good. She didn't have depth perception at that point. So a fall like that was hard on her in more than one way. Um, in any case, I did not have to say much to this lady because other people jumped in and said some things for me. Eventually, of course, we mended fences. It wasn't easy because she never ever apologized to Ivy or me. Um, I maybe she didn't need to. I mean, but what I can tell you is that it was a really tough moment for me because we are part of the same community. Not only were we part of the body of Christ, we were also part of the same little church, little tiny church in Bancroft, not a big church. Everybody talks. Now, Ivy was not absolutely perfect, and I wasn't either. I should have been there to chivvy her along, and she probably should have been moving, but she was 5, and she was not really thinking about that. And yes, clearly, I'm on my child's side, admittedly. Um, but she wasn't in the right either, this lady, and, it was a tough one. Eventually, we mended fences. Eventually, she got as close to saying she was sorry as she could, and that was just I mean, that was her limitation and mine too. Um, and eventually, we ended up having some lovely talks. She actually taught my kids to crochet and made the cutest little dolls for them as they got older, and, she actually did work to try to have a relationship, to build a relationship. And I invited her actually to come and help me with the Sunday school a few times because, as strict as she was not a bad person at all. So we both tried. We both tried. And I'd have to ask Ivy how she feels about her to this day. She's this dear lady has actually passed on since then. So but it was tough and it was not a quick thing. And sometimes love means saying no. Sometimes it means drawing a line in the sand. Actually, in book club this week, we talked about that. That sometimes when you see something that's wrong, you draw a line in the sand and you say, you're not going any further than this. And that's part of, I think, the love that we understand as love as justice, like Jesus turning over the tables in the in the temple. So there are times where love is not an easy experience, where we end up having to say no to show what love looks like. Love, in any case, is both a yes and a no. Love is, in so many ways, a yes, a blessing, a way to act in a proactive way. Love can also be a time where we say, no, you can't do that. Um, so one of the things that we're doing, and that's in the lectionary this week, is 1 Corinthians 13. And we hear this at everybody's weddings, and we hear this all the time. And I think people think of it as this romance thing, and it is. It's a happy, beautiful thing. But I want to give you a little context. The church in Corinthians was getting this letter from Paul because they were everything they were doing was the opposite of love. So what we see is this beautiful poem, this prayer, this little guidebook for love was actually a yes and a no. And we see that. We see the proactive part, the yes part. Love is patient, love is kind. And we also see the reactive, the draw a line in the sand part. The love does not envy. Love is not jealous. Love does not pick fights. So we see in 1 Corinthians 13, we see both the yes and the no. And they're important. They're very important. There are times that you've got to say both yes and no in order to show that you love. And Paul was doing that because that church was fighting with each other. They were envious and jealous, and they were putting each other in a hierarchy as some people were more important and others were less. So they were showing in their actions and their attitudes what love was not. So he wrote to them to tell them what love is. Sometimes love is yes, and sometimes love is no. Both are important. And we're going to explore that more on Sunday when I see you in the service. So I look forward to that. I I know that there are always going to be times in our congregation, in our beloved community, where love is going to be yes and it's going to be no. I pray along with Paul that we are able to do it in a way that mends fences, that shows the rest of our community what love looks like when it is a justice seeking thing, when it is a blessing, when it says yes and when it says no. So if you have a chance before the service, go and reread 1 Corinthians 13. Think about it if you were hearing it as a rebuke, because part of what they were hearing was a rebuke. Think of it also as that guidebook. I know we in the past have said it as a prayer and as a way to embody love, as in, I am patient, I am kind. We did that one Lent a few years ago. It might be worth it to do that too, but take some time, look at the yes and the no of love, and we'll look at that again together on Sunday. So, in this together with you, and until next week, Reverend Stephanie signing off.